Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zarya Rubin, a functional medicine doctor, an international speaker, and a burnout badass because I've been there myself. After walking away from my own high-stress medical career, I discovered how to break free from burnout to reclaim my passion, purpose, and joy. And now I'm here to help you do the same. From science-backed tips to time-saving hacks, and hopefully some aha moments that just might change your life. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout Podcast. Today's guest is the inspiring Katie Farinas, a yogi, Dharma coach, which we'll learn more about, and midlife guide whose mission is to help women navigate the messy, beautiful, soul-stretching terrain of midlife with compassion, wisdom, and purpose. Katie blends ancient Vedic philosophy with modern science to lead women on a transformative path, one rooted in inner peace, aligned purpose, and soulful living. Through her powerful platform, the Midlife Purpose Project, she helps others unlock their Dharma, their soul's purpose, believing deeply that when we align who we truly are, we not only heal ourselves, but we begin to transform the world around us. This is going to be a very powerful episode, and I can't wait to dive in.
Thank you
So
so
welcome,
much.
Katie. Yes, hi.
Yes, thank you for having me, Zarya. I'm very excited to have this conversation.
I feel like our audience has so many women and so many women in midlife that this is really going to speak to them. Let's talk about what inspired you to start the Midlife Purpose Project and what does that mean to you?
So, wow, that's a big question. So my podcast was originally called Mom on the Verge, which we discussed before we started recording. And the original reason why I started the podcast was that I was going through some really tough personal things in my personal life. And I knew I wasn't alone in struggling because to be alive and to live in these human bodies and on this earthly plane is to go through some really difficult things in our lives. And I wanted community. I wanted to be able to share, to hear back from others, and I wanted to serve. I really deeply wanted to serve because I knew that my struggles could serve someone else, right? Just hearing about what I was going through, somebody else feeling less alone, all of the wisdom and science that I had learned through the years about how to navigate these really challenging situations. I knew that it was really a duty. So we're going to talk about Dharma in a little bit. The Dharma, what it actually means in Sanskrit is sacred duty. And there are many kinds of Dharma, but I felt a sacred duty to share everything that I had learned that was allowing me to manage this really challenging phase of my life with a tremendous amount of grace, with not heading into burnout. It was allowing me to remain clear-minded and clear-headed so that I could make the decisions that I needed to make, which were a lot of really tough decisions at the time. And when you enter overwhelm, it's really hard to do that. And so I felt a duty. I felt that my Dharma, part of my Dharma was that I needed to share this with the world. And so that is how Mom on the Verge started. Now, over time, that kind of evolved because I really entered this midlife phase and realized how soul stretching it actually is, that it's really challenging phase for women, physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationship wise. It's in pretty much every single aspect of our lives gets challenged during this midlife phase. And although everything I've been talking about on Mom on the Verge was applicable to motherhood and to, the facing challenges in our lives, it's applicable to midlife as well. And so I talk about a lot of the same things that I did when the show was called Mom on the Verge, but we now are kind of panning a little bit and we talk more about dealing with the struggles that we face, particularly in midlife.
Oh, this resonates for me as a mom in midlife. I feel like there's this intersection between motherhood and midlife that is so ripe for overwhelm and burnout. And as Brene Brown talks about it, the midlife unraveling.
Yeah.
where you sort of, I mean, it's amazing and terrible, and you fall apart in order to really discover who you are and what really matters. So I am a woman on the verge and a
Yes.
woman in midlife. So
Yes.
this all definitely resonates
Yeah.
for me.
And midlife is, it does feel like an unraveling, and it is in a way, but I really believe that it's a shedding of all the layers, all the things that we have picked up throughout our lifetime that don't really belong to us and that we need to let go of. And it's scary. It feels uncomfortable because we've lived a certain way for however many years, many decades of our lives. But we get to a point where we realize that the old patterns are no longer serving us. And we need to step into new ways of being in relationship, new ways of carrying ourselves, of thinking, of behaving, and ways that are true to our soul, right? That they're not to people please, they're not to look a certain way, they're not really for any other purpose other than to bring us home to ourselves, to walk in authenticity, and to allow that to be enough to serve the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually really incredible how we move from this earlier phase in our lives that is really outwardly focused on
Mhm,
achievement and
mhm.
striving and people pleasing and being who others want us to be or who pressure us to be. And then there's this transition that happens when we start to move inwards and realize, okay, this isn't working for me. And what got me here is not going to get me there. And I'm going to burn out. Maybe I have burned out. Maybe I have developed some medical issues as a result
Mhm.
of all the chronic stress and the constant striving. So I developed all kinds of autoimmune issues and things, even though I was super healthy and doing all the right things. It was just the stress and the misalignment of
Mhm.
my soul's purpose or
Yep.
dharma, which is a concept that I was not that familiar with. Obviously, I've heard of it and it's present in pop culture, but how did you get involved in the spiritual world and make those connections?
So I was very spiritual from a very young age. I can remember my earliest memories playing alone in my house and feeling the presence of something with me, and not in a scary way, but in a very warm, loving, and like supportive way. And it just was something that was with me throughout my childhood. And then life started doing its life thing, right? Expectations started to be placed upon me. I was looking to achieve, I was looking to please my parents, I was trying to check all the boxes of going to school and having a career and buying a house and getting married and having children and, all the things that we do. And I remember at some
Familiar, yes.
Yes, yes, yes. I remember at some point thinking, wow, where did my intuition go? I used to have this really prevalent voice inside my head that I knew wasn't mine. And it really guided me in life. And all of a sudden, I couldn't access it anymore. And I remember being very, very aware of that and realizing it was gone, but I couldn't figure out how to access it. And I didn't even understand at that time why it had disappeared. Then I had my first child, and entering into motherhood for me was really, really challenging. I developed postpartum depression. Motherhood, I think, was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. I was deeply unhappy. And I love my children dearly, but I was really unhappy in those early years of motherhood. I felt bored. I felt disconnected. I felt alone. Then I had my second child and I developed chronic migraine. And I think it was a symptom of how sick I was spiritually because I had lost that connection to something bigger. And I was really entrenched in just the day to day and checking the things I needed to do off the day's list and being just deeply disconnected from my purpose and unhappy in my day to day. So I developed chronic migraine, and I've always been someone who exercises on a regular basis. And I've done every form of exercise you can possibly imagine. But I became so sick that I couldn't do any of that. And there was a voice inside of my head, and the voice came back. It was like all of a sudden the voice came back, and it just said one thing. go to yoga. That's all I heard. I had done yoga in the past. I was kind of in and out. I used it as a form of exercise. I really wasn't into the philosophy or the spirituality or anything like that. And I just heard, go to yoga, and it was insistent, that voice. It was like a hammer in my head that it just kept saying the same thing. And so I listened and I went, and I was very, very sick at the time. And I couldn't do most of yoga, honestly, but I would lay there. I fortunately found a fantastic studio that was super supportive, and I would do what I could do. And then when I couldn't do any more, I would go down to child's pose, or I'd rest in savasana. And I remember every time that I went, I was deeply depressed at the time. I was contemplating taking my own life. Like, it was a very challenging time in my life. And every time I left, I felt like there was just a crack of light that had come through, just a little whisper of hope that maybe things could get better. And so I kept going. I kept going for that whisper, for that crack of light. And that was where the journey really began for me. And that was about 13 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's so powerful on so many levels. First of all, I think many of us don't acknowledge that there is this inner voice, that we don't listen to it, or we actively ignore it.
Yes. Yeah.
At times, I know perhaps I have been guilty of that. The inner voice is screaming loudly, and you say, I don't really want to hear that because
Yeah.
that doesn't align with my plan.
Plan.
And yeah, so to have that awareness and to really listen, I have had that as well, where it's just this like weird message, and you go, okay, I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to follow that path and see where it leads. And then it leads somewhere really beautiful. And I think yoga is an extremely transformative experience. It's, it's not just exercise.
Mhm.
It is a sort of mind body meditation in motion. I started doing yoga about, it's almost 30 years ago. And it really, it's been incredible. And I didn't pursue it as far as you did to then decide to go further down that path. So tell us a little bit more about how that happened and what was next.
So I just became a regular practitioner. I was going to classes all the time, and I love the physicality. I'm a very somatic person, so I enjoy anything that involves using my body. And I loved the meditation component. I loved the movement or the asana. I loved the breath work. I loved all of it. But what I found that I loved the most was the theme of the class. Commonly what happens, you go into a yoga class and the teacher will give a little talk, little like 3-minute talk on a certain topic. And that's called a Dharma talk is what it's called. And then they may take whatever that theme is and weave it throughout the practice, kind of bring it back as you're moving through your practice in through Savasana. And I remember being like, that's my favorite part of the class. And teachers would say something simple or small, and a big light bulb would go off in my mind. And I'd realize things, and I've had sparks of inspiration, and I would feel just this deep, deep knowing in a way that I had. You and I are probably similar in age and grew up in the same generation. And I don't know about how you grew up, but I think it was the way I grew up was pretty typical, where you listen to your parents. You did what your parents told you. They were right, you were wrong. They were an adult, you were a child. And that really outsources your knowing, right? You start to not trust yourself anymore and look to others for the answers. And so many times I did not agree with what my parents were telling me, but I thought, they're the adults. They're very emphatic that they're right. They must be correct. And so I stopped having my own knowing. And yoga really, that's a big part of what it did for me, was return me to my own inner knowing, to know that I am my own guide, that I have all the answers inside of me, and that I should trust that despite what the outside world is telling me. And I don't need to listen to the outside world. And even when everyone outside of me thinks that I'm crazy for wanting to do something, that's okay. They can think that, and I can still move forward knowing that I know my own answers. And yoga did that for me. It really did. I didn't. So yoga is a science and a system. And I didn't realize it when I started down this path, but really yoga is a form of nervous system regulation. So if my daughter's actually currently in this nervous system regulation program, and I'm doing it along with her so that we can I can keep up with her and make sure she's following what she's supposed to be doing. But also I'm just super curious of what goes on in a program like this. And it is yoga. They're calling it nervous system regulation, and it is very scientific, but it's everything that we do from a body perspective, from a mindset perspective, from breath work and meditation, brain retraining, somatics. It's all yoga. And so when you learn to regulate your nervous system, and I think that this is one of the most misunderstood pieces when it comes to finding our purpose, which is what I work with women on a lot, is uncovering what they're here to do. We can't hear those messages if we have a dysregulated nervous system. We first have to calm everything down and trust our bodies and trust that little voice inside of us and be willing to take risks that are scary. But if we have a nervous system that is dysregulated, we're not going to be able to take that risk because it's just too scary and too dysregulating. But if we're coming from a place of peace, if we know that we are all we ever need, that everything is okay, no matter what, then we will be able to make the big moves. Now, I say the big moves. The big moves could be, I've decided to sign up for this class that I haven't, I postponed signing up for because I thought it was too much money, or it's going to take time away from my family, or whatever the thought processes are going on behind the scenes. But it takes a regulated nervous system to step outside of our comfort zone. Even if the comfort zone is uncomfortable, it's still familiar.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I love this concept of coaching women and helping women to discover their true purpose, their soul purpose, their dharma. And you talk about some of the blocks or some of the things that keep us from discovering that. So one being nervous system dysregulation.
Yes.
What are some other things that have prevented women from figuring this out or from executing on it? And how do you help them overcome that?
So I would say another big one is you could call them subconscious beliefs or limiting beliefs. Usually the limiting beliefs are subconscious, right? Typically speaking. But these are core beliefs that we carry around with us that impact every thought, every word, every action, every decision, every interaction that we have with another human being. And we don't know it. So we don't know that there's this program running in the background of our minds that is impacting every single aspect of our lives. So a lot of what I do is we're going to learn to regulate your nervous system, and we're going to investigate, what are these core beliefs? What is the program that's running in your mind? And how is it serving you? And if it's not serving you, where did it come from? How can we befriend it? We do a lot of befriending of these unconscious limiting beliefs because they're there to protect us, right? We don't develop them for no reason. We develop them because at one point in our lives, it served us to have them. But now we are fully resourced adults, and we don't need them to protect us anymore. But we can't just say, no, thank you, and have them go away. I wish it was that easy. These are neural pathways, right? If you want to look at this from a scientific perspective, this is a neuro pathway. It is a deeply ingrained neuro pathway that you have been likely firing for many decades of your life. So to simply say, I don't want to believe that anymore, it's just not going to work. So we have to learn how to identify it, figure out where it came from, befriend it, have compassion for it, allow it to be. And the more we allow it to be, the more likely it is to say, I don't need to be here. She's seen me. She's heard me. She's understood me. I feel validated. I can go now. And we at the same time, we can work on replacing that neural pathway with a new neural pathway that does serve us.
Yeah, it actually is reminiscent a bit of internal family systems work.
Exactly.
It just reminds me of that, of listening to the different parts that are contained within us, and that some of those parts evolved out of necessity or trauma or self-protection, and they were coping mechanisms, and maybe they were even adaptive at the time. But then over time, they've sort of become maladaptive and
Yes.
they are sabotaging us. And we're not even aware because we're so used to going down that grooved neural
Yes.
pathway.
Yeah. And it happens, these limiting beliefs, the most likely they are subconscious. So they are creating behaviors or thoughts or all different things in your life without you actually knowing that they're doing it, right? Like you're most likely you are unaware that that is what's happening. I have a lot of people say, I don't know, when they come in and I say, well, what do you think you would like to do? If you could do anything in the world, literally anything, no holds bar, not money, not time, not family, like just go for it, dream big. And they say, I don't know. Oh, well, you do know. Let me start with that. 100% you do know. But there's a program that's running in the background of your brain that is sending you all kinds of messages. But because we're not tapped into it, because we're not accustomed to paying attention to that programming, we feel blank. We feel like we don't have the answers. So meditation is a big piece of when I work with my clients, because that's when we start to become aware of the thoughts that are happening in our minds. These thoughts are only subconscious because we're really not paying attention to them. Once we start sitting with our thoughts, we'll start seeing them. They'll start rising up, bubbling up, and then you can be in the middle of meditation and be like, oh, whoa, okay. So that's there. I didn't know that was there. So meditation is a big piece. Somatic work is a big piece because we carry emotions in our body. And we can't work only from the top down. We have to work top down and bottom up. So I try to work in both directions with people. And that somatic piece is really important for releasing any stuck energy, of having things come to the surface that we didn't realize was there. Because once we start releasing it, all of a sudden emotions start bubbling up, and then we can start questioning, like, why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? And so it's all of this releasing, right? Releasing and becoming aware.
Yeah, I love that. If there's somebody listening right now who is just maybe at the start of their journey and is wondering, what are some practical strategies or tips or habits that they could start to use to help women get in touch with that inner voice or that true self?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned meditation.
Meditation is huge. So I'll give you a list of several. I really always tell people there are 101 different ways that we can do this, more than that, I'm sure. And it can be overwhelming. It's kind of like the health industry when you're trying to, at this phase, us midlife women, I'm sure a lot of people are consuming content about perimenopause and menopause and longevity. And I am right there with them because all of that stuff is important to me as well. But it also can become overwhelming. You get this
Yes.
information overload and you're like, I'm going to do nothing because I am
Absolutely.
so overloaded with all of this information. So what I like to tell people is pick one thing. Okay. So I'll give you a list of a couple of different things. Choose one and choose the one that immediately pops out to you. Probably the one that's going to work for you. The one that when I say it, something inside of your body responds. Not your mind, but something in your body responds to me saying it. So I love a morning routine. I think setting your day off, starting your day with some sort of centering practice really, really sets the tone for your entire day. And I say that I believe that, and I do believe it, but it's actually scientifically based. So if you can take 5 minutes in the morning for one of these practices, a 5-minute meditation, a 5-minute journaling practice, 5 minutes of breath work, 5 minutes of prayer, 5 minutes of intention setting, a 5-minute body scan, truly any one of these things will be transformational in your life. And if you can't do 5 minutes, do 3 minutes, do 2 minutes. It really doesn't. 1 minute can be transformational. It truly can. If you sit and just breathe and do nothing but focus on your breath for 1 minute, you will feel a difference in your body, a dramatic difference in your body. And over time, it becomes a little like addictive in a way because you feel better. And then you're like, oh, wait, well, what if I did this for 90 seconds? How much better could I feel? In 2 minutes, how much better can I feel? So just commit to that 1 minute or that 2 minutes and then let it go, right? Because often people want to jump to, well, what if I can't do 2 minutes? Or what if I get distracted or disrupted or all these what ifs? There's a lot of what ifs that come in. Do your best every day for the amount of time that you feel you can commit. If you miss a day, it's okay. If you miss a week, it's okay. It's all okay, right? Everything's okay. You just set the intention and do it as frequently as you can. And if it's something that you don't like, don't keep doing it, right? If you think, oh, I think it's going to be breath work for me, and then you try to sit and breathe for a minute and you're like, well, that was terrible. Hated that. Then try something different. This is the thing that I love about yoga and yoga philosophy is that it is extremely compassionate. Everything we do with compassion. And so maybe one day you'll be regulated enough to sit and do that breath work, but maybe today's not that day. And so today it's easier to write in your journal for 1 minute, or look outside at your window at the nature for 1 minute, or pet your dog for 1 minute, right? These are all really calming and regulating practices. And they all have one thing in common, and that's that you are paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment, which is the definition of mindfulness by Jon Kabat-Zinn. That's it. Do one thing that you pay attention in the present moment on purpose and without judgment for whatever amount of time that you have.
I think that we are so past focused and future focused and also multitasking focused, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
defocused,
Yeah.
that it can be very difficult or very unusual for us to be single focused, present moment oriented. And that is really the way that we can help calm our nervous system and regulate and get in touch with that clarity and that voice that's telling us this is what it should be doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I actually did a watercolor painting class
I
earlier
love that.
in the spring, and it was so great because you cannot do watercolor multitask.
Yeah.
You can't really be anywhere else. Like, you have to be in that moment. I'm also a singer, and so I sing a lot and rehearse and perform. And when you're in a performance,
Yeah.
you can't, you're not on your phone, you're not elsewhere, you're not thinking
Yes.
about other stuff. You just have
Yes.
to be in the moment. So I think that is a really great tool for women to try, and whether that is like yoga or meditation or going for a walk, but really just do that thing. Like, don't go
Yes.
for a walk and talk on the phone.
Yeah. I mean, even I 100% agree with you. And there's part of what we're talking about is finding things that put you into flow. So put you into that flow
Yes,
state
yes.
where you can be super present, but also it's a combination of peaceful and lit up at the same time. And you can do that making a cup of coffee. I mean, I've done it where I say, I'm not going to do anything other than make this cup of coffee, from pouring the water into the containers, putting the grounds in, to pouring it into my cup, to listening to it percolate, to pouring the coffee into my cup. I use half and half, pouring the creamer in, stirring it, and doing it all with a sense of purpose, doing it all intentionally slow because we rush through our lives and that's very disruptive to our nervous system. It's really about making a commitment to do very small things throughout your day, slowly and with presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for the women who work with you and they try to implement some of these techniques, they try to adopt some of these habits and mindfulness rituals, and they try to get closer to that Dharma or soul purpose, what's the next step once they get there and they rediscover or discover for the first time, oh, this might actually be who I am, or this might actually be what I'm supposed to be doing? What now?
So the answer to that is really, really varied. And what I will say, what usually happens is we uncover something that they already knew. So your Dharma is like this thread. It's this constant that has run throughout your entire life. And what I do is help women to identify it, help them to find it. It's already there. They have been participating in it throughout their entire lives, but they don't have the awareness that that's what they've been doing. And so once we bring awareness to what it is, it can be big or small. So there are people who say, you know what, I'm going to start taking this watercolor class, right? That brings me so much joy, and that I'm a creative, right? This is a big part of my Dharma, that I am a creative and I get to go into this watercolor class once a week and live out my creativity. And it makes me so happy and so joyful. And then I bring that back to my family. I bring that joy back to my family, and it's contagious, right? Or it can be, wow, my job really doesn't suit me. It's really not reflective of my Dharma. And it's why I feel so burnt out, right? A lot of women come really burnt out because they have unknowingly created lives that are not in alignment with who they are and what they're meant to be doing. And so everything feels like a climb. Everything feels like an
Mhm.
uphill battle, and they are just exhausted because they have been climbing for 20 or 30 years. And so for some women, it is, maybe I need to apply to this different position within my company, or maybe I need to leave my company altogether. So it can be big like that, a big
Yeah.
life change. And for some people, it is just a tweak where they realize, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing, but I can actually do that within this life that I've created. I just need to come at my tasks with a little bit different perspective, a little different intention, and then I will feel so much more fulfilled because of the way that I'm coming at this particular thing that I'm doing, whether it be parenting or their job or how they interact with family, friends, coworkers, etc. So for example, let's say someone finds out that they are a caretaker. Okay, but they don't have a caretaking job like being a nurse or a physical therapist or something like that. But you can caretake in so many beautiful ways in your life with your children, of course, but even in the office, just doing small things of really being a listening ear for one of your coworkers, or being the person who sets up the birthday parties and making sure you know everybody's birthday and that somebody gets something special on their birthday. It's little things like that. And for some people, that's plenty. That's enough. That fills that sense of I am being my authentic self. So it's a full spectrum of what people do with the information or the wisdom that they uncover in the process.
I love that it can be really big or it can be really small. It's just
Yeah.
a meaningful shift
Yes.
that can change the balance or the orientation. Why is it, do you think, I don't know if this is true for everyone, it was certainly true for me, that the things that came so easily to me and were so natural and were just who I am, those were discounted and put aside. And the things that were so difficult
Yes.
and verging on impossible, those were the things I pursued
Yes.
fervently and insisted on succeeding at and being the best at,
Yes.
even though they weren't what I was supposed to be doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you are not alone. That is an extremely common theme. And I don't know why. I don't have an answer for why. I don't know if it's cultural, if it's just the way our generation was raised. I have no answer, but it is so common. We discount the things that come easy to us, because if they come easy to us, they just must not be that
It's
valuable.
not valuable. Right. Exactly. If you're not suffering, if you're not struggling and striving, and then it doesn't count.
That exactly. And it's a shame. And it's a mindset shift we need to take, because the things that come easily to you, they come easily to you for a reason. And they are what you are meant to be doing. They are the gifts that have been bestowed upon you by the divine, God, universe, whatever words you want to use. We all have
Genetic lottery.
the genetic lottery, right? Although sometimes I'm like, I don't really fit in this genetic
Yeah.
pool at all.
Yeah.
But yes, they are the things. They are your gifts. And the idea of, having a dharma or a soul's purpose is that we each have one. And if we're each living into our own, we it's like a knitted blanket. We're each a thread in the blanket, and each one of us has our job to do. And when we do our job and we do it well, and we always will because those are the things that we're most lit up and passionate about, we create this really strong blanket. And when we try to discount what we're supposed to be doing and do something else because it looks shinier or more prestigious or it makes more money or whatever reasons we have, we are a weak thread in the blanket and it starts to fray. Our thread starts to fray. And what happens when enough threads start to fray? The whole blanket falls apart.
Yeah, I have been there with an unraveled blanket, let me tell you. But I sort of think that it goes back really far to childhood and to school and the way we approach kids and learning and success and academic achievement. Because I think at a certain point, if you're a really, really, really smart kid, raising my hand, who is a high achiever, who does really well in school, you're going to get pushed down a certain path and you're going to get rewarded and praised for that. So
Yes.
my path was not, well, you should do something creative. It was, well,
Yeah.
obviously you're so smart. You're going to be a scientist, be a physician, be a lawyer, be
Yeah.
a mathematician. Like that's where you're headed.
Yes.
And that wasn't the right path for me in the
Yeah.
end.
Yes, I 100% agree. And it's a conversation that I have with my children all of the time. School is complicated. We could have a whole episode on schooling. And I actually
For
have on
sure.
my own podcast, I've
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
episode. But there's a lot of assumed value that you are valuable if you can get the A, if you can take all the AP courses, if you get the 1600 on the SAT. And then the people who don't feel very invaluable.
Mhm.
And that is sad. It's really a shame, and it's something that I am trying to instill in my own children that school is just it's a lot of hoop jumping. You have to get through it. There is we all need to learn. Learning is good. I'm definitely not against learning, but these grades and these tests, they're just hoops that you have to get through to get the degree because you need a degree in this world. But
And they don't define who you are.
they don't define who you are, and they don't define your gifts and your talents and how successful you can be in this world. And then we have to talk about what the definition of success is, right? So
Mm,
that's a whole other
we need a whole other episode for this.
Yes. What does success really look like? Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And you have two parts, two ends of the spectrum. Someone like you who got pushed along this certain path, and then you have these other kids who just feel like they won't ever amount to anything because the system doesn't work for them and they don't do well within the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's another message.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we could literally continue this conversation for another 2 hours. Let's close out with what's the best advice you've ever received that you want to share with our listeners?
I wish I had prep time for this one. Um, I've gotten so much really great advice. I think that the thing that most profoundly changed my life was I guess advice. It was a spiritual teacher, Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I'm actually going to see him in September. I'm really excited. And he talks all about basically being in the present moment and the importance of being in the present moment. And it was through his teachings that I learned to do that. And it has been transformational for my life. And don't get me wrong, it's a constant practice. It's a constant coming back to, coming back to. I don't think any of us will, very few of us in this lifetime will learn to 100% live in the present moment all of the time. But the more you can train your brain to do it, the more everything changes on the inside.
I love this conversation that we've had. I feel like it's been full of really deep wisdom and honesty and some practical guidance for folks. So if you love this episode, go ahead and share it with somebody who thinks, you think they need to hear this message about being in the present and being true to yourself, finding your true soul's purpose. And you make sure to leave us a review. It really does help more women discover the podcast. So I want people to check out Katie's work. You can check out the Midlife Purpose Project, which is a podcast, correct?
Yes.
On
Yes.
Apple and Spotify and all the podcast platforms. They can go to your website, which is katiefarinas.com. Follow you on Instagram. And you also have a Substack community as well.
Yes, which is also just at Katie Farinas. So we just keep it simple over here.
Yeah. Anything else that's coming up for folks to check out or?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that question. I have a workshop that's coming up, a master class. I'm just going to check on the date here. It is called Peace in Turbulent Times, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times. It's August the 9th, and it is both an in-person and virtual workshop. So I can send the link over to you if you'd like, and people can sign up for that. And it's basically a couple of hours spending together talking about how to maintain inner peace while living in this chaotic world that we're living in right now.
We all need that very badly. So thank you so much, Katie, for coming on the show. We're going to have all of these details in the show notes, so check it out. And until next time, remember, burnout is not your destiny. It's your wake-up call.